Well, Ukraine's foreign minister is standing down. Dmytro Kuleba, one of Ukraine's most recognizable faces on the international stage. His resignation is part of that wider reset that President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says is vital heading into another winter in the war with Russia.
I have already mentioned the reset of the government as well as many ministries. I am very grateful to the ministers and the whole government team that worked for Ukraine and Ukrainians for 4.5 years, and some for 5. We need new energy today, and these steps are related only to the strengthening of our state in different directions. International policy, diplomacy is not an exception.
I'd like to welcome Yevheniia Kravchuk, a Ukrainian MP with Volodymyr Zelensky's Servant of the People Party. She joins me now live from Kyiv. So this, as we've said, was the biggest shakeup to the Ukrainian government that we've seen since the start of the war. Why do you personally think we have seen these changes?
Well, I would call it probably a reboot of the government. As you know, during the martial law, so what the war is, we cannot have any elections in the parliament or elections of the president, but we can change ministers and put some new people, new energy, as President Zelenskyy said, into the cabinet ministers. Regarding Dmytro Kuleba, because you pointed out his resignation, and we had meeting with President tonight, with our party, with our fraction, and he again thanked Dmytro Kuleba for his work. Dmytro Kuleba was elected as a minister even before the full-scale invasion, so it makes, as I remember, around 4 years now on the position, and it's just people. Basically, during 5 or 4 years, it's not their fault. They just, sort of get tired. But again, Dmytro Kuleba is very efficient, was very efficient as a minister. This is the position that President is, going to put forward to the parliament. But he mentioned that he wants as Andriy Sybiha as a new foreign minister. Andriy Sybiha right now is working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And before that, at the beginning of full-scale invasion, he was deeply involved in communications, international communications and diplomacy, together with President Zelenskyy in the office of president.
So tell us more about him, because as we've said, Kuleba is a face that many around the world will recognize. He's worked extensively with international partners of Ukraine. Do you think this new candidate for foreign minister would take major changes in the way he represents Ukraine on the world stage?
Well, Andriy Sybiha is also a diplomat. He was ambassador in different countries. He served together with President Zelenskyy, as I mentioned, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. So he knows exactly what aid from what country we need to be efficient and to be victorious in this war. He is now working in the ministry as the deputy minister, so he will not need any time to settle, to resettle. He knows what he's doing, and I respect him as a diplomat as well.
Why do you think we're seeing this happening now? I can fully understand Kuleba being exhausted after his service, but there's others who've been swapped out as well. Is there something to the timing here, do you think?
Indeed, it's not just Minister Kuleba who's leaving his position. We will have 9 new ministers, or 9 votes tomorrow in the parliament in different ministries. By the way, we'll be having a diplomat as well for the Minister of Culture, to bring Ukrainian culture closer to other countries, to understand Ukraine better. Also, we will have the changes with the Minister of Justice, and our Vice Prime Minister, Ruslan Stefanchuk, also very well known abroad, will be taking this position together with her position as a Vice Prime Minister. And it's understandable as well, because European integration is very largely is about legislation. And I would say every second law in the parliament that we're voting for is for European integration.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on DW News with those insights. That is Ukrainian MP Yevheniia Kravchuk. Well, Russia has stepped up a nationwide aerial bombardment campaign in Ukraine. At least 7 people were killed and dozens more wounded in an airstrike on Lviv. The city and its historic center in the far west of Ukraine have so far largely been spared in the war. Now, meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is reshuffling his cabinet in the biggest shakeup since the start of hostilities 2.5 years ago.
Daybreak reveals the extent of destruction after overnight airstrikes on Lviv. It was one of several cities across the country to be targeted in Russia's latest wave of attacks. Ukraine said its air defenses were unable to shoot down all of the incoming missiles and drones. Those that made it through, causing widespread suffering on the ground.
There's huge destruction. More than 70 buildings were damaged. They were all part of our historic city center.
Lviv, in the far west of Ukraine, close to the Polish border, has been seen as relatively safe in recent months. Thousands of Ukrainians have fled there from parts of the country closer to the frontline fighting.
We're from Dnipro. We came to Lviv to escape the war, but the war hit us here.
The Lviv attacks come a day after one of the deadliest Russian strikes since the start of the war, when dozens of people were killed in the central city of Poltava. Russia claims it was targeting a military institute whose soldiers and foreign instructors were involved in attacking civilian sites inside Russia.
More now from DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Nick, President Zelenskyy carrying out the biggest government shakeup since the war began. What else can you tell us about what is going on here?
We don't really understand why these ministers and these vice premiers in particular have been pushed out. It's not like there was a kind of sheet with their kind of achievements and failures that was really explained to the Ukrainian public as such. There's still lots of other people seemingly keeping their jobs who have had a lot more criticism from civil society and from experts. But it does feel like Volodymyr Zelenskyy feels it's time for new faces, that, you know, given we're not having elections because it's wartime, and that's something that Ukrainian society for the most part agrees on, there is need for change and for new visuals and for new personalities. If you talk to the kind of experts, people who really follow kind of Ukrainian governance closely, lots of them will say actually the ministers make less of a difference than people in Volodymyr Zelenskyy's kind of closer orbit, informal advisors, people who don't officially have maybe government jobs, aren't widely known. Those people often enough have more influence than ministers, so maybe this actually won't have that much of an impact, you know, looking forward in the next couple of weeks and months.
Let's talk a little bit about Russia's attacks on Lviv today. How is it that Russian missiles and drones make it so far all the way across Ukraine without being intercepted?
So I think the first thing to kind of remember about all this is that lots of these missiles particularly are flying very, very high, and they only kind of come in range of air defense systems when they're going for their targets. So, you know, for lots of the kind of route from Russia to Lviv, they would have been without, you know, outside the range of the systems that Ukraine has. And it is just simply a question of a lack of systems. Ukraine is a vast country. This is a country that is bigger than France, that is, you know, still only in possession of a very limited number of modern systems, and they are concentrated around Kyiv, where I am now, and also near the front lines to protect Ukrainian troops from Russian planes. So there is just a question of, you know, resources in Ukraine really having to choose, even if it has air defenses in place. Can it afford to use the missiles that are also very, you know, in short supply to hit every target? There is a sense in places like Lviv that, you know, you are safer and you are close to the EU border, that things should be different there. But this is a reminder that anywhere in this country is within range of Russian systems. And we're going to hear more calls, I'm sure, in the next few days from Ukraine, to ask NATO countries like Poland to use their missile defense systems to protect Western Ukraine, cities like Lviv, and also for Western countries to allow Ukraine to attack Russian forces at source, as it were, to go after the Russian airfields where these attacks are launched from, rather than trying to, you know, use huge amounts of resources to hit and to intercept every single missile.
Nick, thank you so much for your reporting. That's DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv.